Good afternoon, Mr. President. We have in the House pressmen here. They will make a quick introduction of themselves, and then we'll go straight to receiving the preliminary report. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us the President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Yakubu Chonoko Mekiao, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Officer of the Order of Niger. I would love you to take turns to quickly introduce yourself. Let's know your name, the media house you represent, and then we'll do that very quickly. And the President will give the preliminary report of the Gubernatorial and House of Assembly elections. So let's have a quick introduction of the pressmen, and then we'll do a quick introduction of those in the Situation Room as well. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Mr. Godwin. Sir, I work for Daily Sun newspaper.
Daily Sun.
Thank you, Godwin. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Ikechukwu Nochiri from Vanguard newspaper.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Ikechukwu, good to have you.
Wando Sombu from the News Agency of Nigeria.
Wando, thank you for coming.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Augustine Okezie, representing AIT in Repower.
Augustine, thank you for coming.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Olakomi Oluwanishola, representing Channels TV.
Olakomi, thank you so much for coming.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Martin Sidako, representing Arise News.
Martin Sidako, thank you so much.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Teresa Tob, representing Channels TV.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Teresa, thank you for coming.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Samin Ushaibu, representing NTA.
Samin Ushaibu, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just before you go on, to introduce to the pressmen in the House, we have the chairman of the NBA Election Monitoring Group, the first vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association. She's right on my right. Thank you very much for all that you have been doing in monitoring this election. And then we also have the chairman of the Human Rights Institute. He's done a whole lot of work, Mr. Chinoye Mbeagu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He's also done a lot of work. He co-chairs the NBA Election Monitoring Group. And of course, we have directors and heads of departments and staff of the Nigerian Bar Association Secretariat, as well as lawyers from different branches of the NBA. Mr. President, we will now have the preliminary reports of the Gubernatorial House of Assembly monitoring. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. Well, like you all know, today, the 18th of March, 2023, Nigerians trooped out to vote for
recording in progress
for their governors and members of the state houses of assembly. Elections for the governorship were held in 28 states, and the state houses of assemblies in the 36 states. I happen to be in Kebbi, and that is because I've been accredited to observe this election in Kebbi State. I'm right now in the state capital, Birin Kebbi, where I equally observed the election. Like you've been told, the first vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mrs. Linda Bala, is the chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Election Working Group. and controls and supervises the activities of members of the Nigerian Bar Association that have been accredited as observers by INEC. We have deployed 1,000 observers across the country that were pulled from the Nigerian Bar Association's 128 branches across the country. It is also important to note that in addition to the accredited INEC observers, we have equally commissioned our colleagues that also were engaged in the exercise of their franchise across the country at their polling units to equally send in reports of their observation of matters that happened at their polling units. So what we are doing is a report based on the information that we have received from our observers across the country, and that is why we have the situation room at the Secretariat. So this is a preliminary report based on the observations so far across the country that have been sent in. We notice from the observation reports that we received across the country that there has been an improvement in the deployment of INEC materials and officials at the polling units. Unlike in the presidential election, we noticed an improvement, significant improvement across the country of the deployment of polling materials. Most of the polling units that were visited or observations carried out by our accredited observers or members of the Nigerian Bar Association that happened to vote at those polling units, it was reported that INEC officials arrived on time, materials were on time, and they began the voting process and accreditation in most of the polling units at 8:30 in the morning. And this appears to be the trend and development across the country. We've received such reports from Plateau State. We also got similar reports from Delta State, Cross River State, in Katsina State, Yobe States, and similarly in Osun. We also had reports of early accreditation of voters. Now, there were, however, some places in Lagos, Itiosa local government area, where as at 2:16 p.m., materials had not arrived. The polling unit, that is in Ward 6, Sango Tedo in Itiosa local government area of Lagos State. And no official was also cited. In polling unit number 011, Ward 14, in Neka, Obio, Akpo local government area of River State, voting did not commence as at 11 a.m. today because of the late arrival of polling materials. Well, in some, there are a few of these places where materials did not arrive on time, but generally, there has been a significant improvement in terms of early arrival of materials and early commencement of polls across the country. What we also observed generally is the low turnout of voters. Low turnout of voters across the country. Even here in Kebbi, where I observed, I went around some polling units, you could see low turnout of voters. We also asked questions from the presiding officers and the INEC officials. The general observation is that this time around, they recorded low turnout of voters as opposed to the previous election. Well, some of them said because voting commenced the last time late, some people did not, also expected that there is going to be the repeat of the same thing. So they began to see influx of voters about midday, even though officials were at the polling units quite on time, and materials were available. They set up all that they needed to set up to commence. They met a few people there, but they saw more people coming to the polling units somewhere around midday because of the expectation that the voting will not commence on time. So that is that with respect to the turnout of voters. Violence and intimidation of voters. There were some of those incidences that were noted in Lagos area. In Kosoko polling unit at Ojodu Bega Ward 146, it's reported that thugs attacked voters who were not voting for a particular party. We have verified video reports sent by our observers which show thugs openly announcing on the street in Ajebule, in Ajeromi, Ifedolu, local government area of Lagos State, that any voter who would not vote for a particular political party should not come out to vote. There are reports of destruction of voting in some polling units and cutting away of ballot boxes in some parts of Lagos State. For example, in a polling unit in Aguda, Surulere, an INEC official was captured in a verified video sent by one of our observers announcing to voters that election results will not be uploaded at the close of polls. That naturally would cause agitation with the voters. Similar reports of violent attacks in polling units in Isolo, Lagos, in Ojo, and then we also have, like I said earlier, in Etiosa local government area. We also observed that there were vote buying. Vote buying was also reported across the country. I would say for the places where I also observed the election, that the political parties are really a bit circumspect, as one could see, but you can also see a lot of expectation from even though with all that has been put in place, there seemed to be some discouragement on the side of the political parties, knowing that it's difficult to actually do that and not be caught. But you can see that voters are also expecting that they will be approached for the purpose of buying their own votes. So it takes a better education of both the political parties and the voters for us to be able to deal with these issues decisively across the country. Functioning of beavers nearly in all the polling units that we observed, beavers were functioning properly. I only noticed in a polling unit a situation where a particular voter whose name was found in the register of voters, the hard copy of the register of voters, but apparently the name of that voter was not uploaded, could not confirm and accredit that particular voter, even though the name of the voter and the when we looked at it and of that voter corresponds with what is contained in the register of voters. But because Beavers is the process by which accreditation can be done, that particular voter couldn't vote because the voter could not be accredited on account of the fact that the voters' particulars were not captured in the BVAS. Conduct of security officers, the security officers and INECs in most part of the places where we received reports from our observers, INEC officials and the security officials did conduct themselves properly in accordance with the guidelines issued by INEC. However, in some of the polling units, we saw the complete absence of security personnel while accreditation was going on. Well, generally, even though in some of those places there were no security officers, accreditation went on smoothly and voters were seen voting in an orderly manner. In most of the polling units, agents conducted themselves well. In some of the places I went, I observed how that they presented their complaints in a very calm and orderly manner where they had complaints. And for some of them that we spoke with, we did explain to them that this is our role. We are there to observe the election and also help to educate them on how they can pass on whatever complaints that they have without necessarily doing anything that would disrupt the conduct of the election. Access to voters to polling units, we saw situations not like we did during the presidential election, easy access of voters to their polling units, because between the last election and this election, they've been able to identify where their polling units are. In some polling units, though, we saw that many of the voters are still so concentrated in polling units, which should have been separated, because we saw polling units with over 1,000 voters, and those polling units are so close to each other that you find so much crowd around that area. There is need for places like that to be further separated and put in some distance to allow for an easy management of the number of voters in those areas. So from about 210 MBA observers that have filed in their reports by 1 p.m. today, 33.6% reported that the conduct of the polls were excellent, and this was done on the forms, on the questionnaires that are contained in the forms that were sent out by the Nigerian Bar Association to the INEC accredited observers to complete. So this is their own assessment. 33.6% of the 210 MBA observers that have filed their reports as at 1 p.m. today reported that the have started counting of the votes, and this development signaled the improvement in the management of the deployment of polling materials, which accounted for early commencement of polls. And so we are beginning to see that votes are being counted as early as 4 p.m., unlike the situation that we saw during the 25th February elections, the national and presidential and national assembly elections. So as it is, this is what we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We are continuing to observe. Our observers are still at the polling units to see the collation. You will recall that until the polls are concluded, votes are counted, and results are entered, then the activities from the polling units will move to the point of collation. We would also get feedbacks from our observers in that respect, and we'll come back to you with further report on this. But I must say that the conduct of the election in the places that I visited were quite orderly. A few concerns here and there, but those are not concerns to do with particularly the use of beavers. Like I said, beavers actually had functioned in most of the polling units that we visited. There was actually no polling unit where we visited or we saw that beaver's machine was not working, except, like I said earlier, we found an instance where the name of the voter is contained in the register of voters, but not in the beavers. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen and my colleagues, this is our report for now, and I'll be happy to take some questions if there are any from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Back to the press. Do we have questions? Specific questions with regards to the monitoring and observation of the election by the NBA? Questions very quickly? Or all your answers have been, you've got all that you need? Okay, that must be a very, very rich and exhaustive report. Okay, there's a question? Okay, let's have that then.
So my name is Eric. I work with the Nation newspapers.
That's not audible. You may want to use the microphone properly. Yeah.
My name is Eric. I am of the Nation newspapers. The president, from his presentation, said he's currently in Kebbi, but he gave graphic, he gave detailed information about happenings in Lagos. He even cited polling unit incidents, but we didn't hear anything about graphic incidents where he's based, Kebbi. Is it that there were no incidents in polling units in Kebbi? In other parts of the country, how come we don't have such information about what happened in polling units in some of this or that? Is it that you don't have observers in those parts of the states? I actually listened and I heard about 4 or 5 incidents, and he mentioned Ajeromi, he mentioned Lekki. We didn't hear any other incident in polling unit in other states. Why? What is special about Lagos? Why don't we have others?
Fantastic. You have a question as well? Mr. President, do you want to take that, or do we take all the questions together?
Yeah, I will take that. My brother, what's his name again? Of the Nation. Yes. So the application that we deployed for the purpose of observing this election puts me in a place where I can see the reports that are sent in by the observers. We have a dashboard and I can view what is being said. Now, I didn't read through my report. There are other polling units in my report. When that report is issued, you would see them. But these instances of violence and voters' intimidation are from the reports we received, and these are the specific local governments that are contained in that report. Did I speak about the polling units I visited in Birnin-Kebbi? Yes, I did. I told you I went to polling units in Birnin-Kebbi. I told you the challenges in some that were encountered, but generally in all that we visited, there was no incidents of violence. There is no incidents of disruption of the election. So I did not just pick that particular state to talk about. And if at the conclusion of our observation, we also receive reports of such incidents in other polling units in other states, we would mention them. So there is no specific interest. There is no reason why we picked those particular polling units that we talked about. These are based on the reports that we received. So there is no such intention. And I mean, I'm in Kebbi, but I'm able to view all of that because of the nature of the application that was deployed. So I could see what is being sent in, and I also have that interim report that is prepared from the situation room and sent to me as well, which tallies with the information that I could view from that application. So I'm not playing omnipresent here. I'm working on the data supplied by our observers across the country. And these are data that is verifiable on the basis of the application that we deployed for that purpose. I hope this answers your concern.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have another question. Your name, your media house again, please.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name remains Augustine Okezie, AIT Repower. You mentioned two things I wanted to pick out. You said it was observed that there were vote buying in certain areas. You know, first of all, it's important to note that we need specifics. If you say there are vote buying in certain areas, according to your report, what particular area, even if we know that, yes, there are no collations yet, at least, even if it has been noticed that there's a particular area, what area was noticed that there was vote buying? And secondly, you said some polling units, there were absence of security outfits. Which particular polling units? Because it's essential that we know the polling units where all this, what's it called, are coming from. These observations are coming from. Thank you very much.
Okay. For vote buying, polling units 020 and 021 in Anambra North local government area, party agents were seen recording names and account numbers of voters at the polling station. In polling unit 15, Ijebu Ode in Ogun State, observers report that party were distributing gift card worth 5,000 naira to voters. At about 12:19 p.m., there was a report from a ward, Unit 09 in Ijebu Ode, a voter was seen being handed over money by a political party agent. So, I mean, these are the reports that we received, and these are the specific polling units that we have in the reports thus far.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Do we have any other question from? No other question? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. President, if you will permit me, I would like to quickly invite the chairman of the committee to thank the pressmen, the people in the situation room, observers online, and those that are still on the field. Mrs. Linda Bala, the first Vice President of the NBA.
My President, distinguished advocate here present, distinguished colleagues, members of the press, we sincerely appreciate you for finding time to come and be with us in this situation room, and I hope that you'll continue to keep up with this partnership. I'm sorry I came in here about 8 a.m., but I had to see my doctor about 10 a.m., so I stepped up before you all guys came in. Thank you so much. Secretarial staff, thank you for doing a wonderful job. Keep it up. See you tomorrow.
Those on the field.
Yeah, oh, those on the field. I'm sure you will see my chats with you. We can't thank you enough. Keep posting. Keep it going. We're waiting. Keep pushing. We still have a few more hours to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And that is all for now. When the final report is available, it will be circulated and then you will be able to have it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everyone.
Best regards to everyone. from Damaturu, Yobe State.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
For those that are asking questions online, I'm sorry we're not able to take questions online. This is just for the pressmen. We would have that public engagement sometime later. It's a preliminary report, and then we need to go back to observing the elections. Thank you for your understanding.